If you ever feel like your sketches aren't quite coming together the way you want, then this video is for you. What's up guys, I'm Braden, the artist behind Homeslice Creative, and today we're diving into the entire process of sketching a character from start to finish. I'm going to show you my techniques from gathering reference all the way through to finishing those final details. I'll be using my brand new penciler pack of brushes for this sketch, and I'll let you know which ones I'm using along the way. You can check them out once they drop, or go to the link in the description below to sign up for updates and even early access. First thing you're always going to want to do when you're starting a drawing is to gather reference. Pinterest and PureRef are always go-to tools for me. So you can see we have images for the Daredevil suit, which will come in handy later. We have Charlie Cox reference. We have the black suit from the Netflix show, which I really wanted to take some inspiration from that. We have general emotion, comics and art inspiration, some posing and anatomy, and we also have some gesture fundamentals and some concept art from the official show for his suit. Now, one thing I've started doing recently is using what's called Magic Poser, and I will actually pose a 3D model into what I want it to be. This can really help you with your foreshortening, your perspective, and just getting the right pose that you want without feeling the need to copy someone else's pose on the internet or other things like that. You can also just shoot your own reference, take pictures of yourself. But for this piece, I decided to do a 3D model, and you can see that right here. So once I've gathered my references, I will go into Photoshop and I'll start off with my Penciler Pack's Conte Special Brush to start laying out the basic pose. So it's really important to establish the basics right from the start, and really pushing it is what can separate your drawing from feeling stiff and lifeless to something more full of expression and detail and life. So in school, I was taught to use what's called the bean method. I'll touch on this in future videos, but basically every pose can be broken down into this bean shape. So the top of your torso is a circle and your pelvis is another circle. So you draw out two circles. It kind of helps it stretch and get contorted and moves around in different ways depending on what your line of action is. And you can see that here we have the top circle for the torso, and then we have the pelvis circle, and you can see I connected it with two lines on either side, and it kind of gives that bean shape, and it also sort of aligns with the line of action that I've established here. It's really important to break things down into shapes early on so that you're not thinking about the 3D aspect of it. You're not thinking about anatomy or facial details. All you want to do to start is just get basic shapes down. There's no pressure. There's no, experiment. If you mess up on the torso, erase it and draw it again. It's just a circle. So it's really important to start out that way, because as you evolve into the next steps, they become more important to have more final details. So if you start out rough and you're not afraid to erase your lines and try different things and experiment, then the next steps become a lot easier. It's really easy to jump straight into the details, but trust me, the best sketches start with strong, basic shapes. You gotta think of everything in terms of circles and lines that will later help guide the final structure. So next up is the construction, and this is when we start to think of things more in 3D. You want to establish your basic shapes, sort of turn those thighs and those arms into cylinders, and this is sort of where we establish the silhouette, where we just kind of build on that gesture. And you can see in this construction drawing that I've started to figure out what the spine would be doing in this pose. And you can see it kind of does an S shape, which most poses will do, or it'll be a C shape. Your body is always having this balancing act, and the spine is a big part of that. It starts from your head and it kind of goes and does that. So yeah, this is really where you can start to see the structure come together, and I'll typically use the Conte Special or the Cyan Draft Brush, which is kind of your typical non-photo blue pencil. This is where I'll use those to keep my lines clean while maintaining that sort of rough, sketchy style. All right, next up is where I started to do a sketch of the anatomy, followed by sort of a rough costume sketch. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll lay out the anatomy, and I'll do an outline of the whole body. I'll connect some important shapes like the neck, the pectoral muscles, the legs, and how they kind of work with the pelvis, and just kind of get a very basic idea of this character's anatomy and their shape. Now, after getting the anatomy and outline sort of there, I'm starting to add in the costume elements. And at this stage, I don't worry too much about perfection at all. I'm just focused on getting the idea down. And you can see I'm adding some dark shades to separate different elements and using my reference to figure out where I want to go with the suit. It's a lot of trial and error, but I think hammering out these details in a rough, sort of stress-free process allows you to make mistakes and experiment before committing to anything. Now for this stage, I'm using the Featherline brush from the penciler pack to get these nice sort of sketchy shapes. And the Featherline brush is my favorite brush in the pack because it does everything I need to do for the sketching process. And it's sort of based on this handy dandy pencil that a lot of artists will use traditionally. Now, I felt very inspired by the Netflix Daredevil costume, but I also wanted to kind of add my own spin on things. You know, the way the MCU does their suits, I didn't want to overcomplicate it. So I took a lot of those elements out and you kind of get this basic sort of looking costume that will be refined upon later. So finally, we're adding the finishing touches, lines, shading, color. And to start that off, I am basically doing my final version of the suit. So I'm taking that rough version, I'm lowering the opacity, I'm going over it and making it look a lot nicer for the final product. And for this, I'm using my precision line brush, which is a very sort of dark, sharp pencil that gives you a nice final line feel. And after that, I spent a little bit of time just kind of doing some base shading to make those darker areas of the suit become more evident. And for that, I used a hard tone brush, which is just sort of this shading brush that has a pencil-y kind of sketchy texture, and it looks really nice. And after that comes the fun part, adding the actual shading. Now this is the part where my penciler pack really shines. So I'm using the mist tone brush, which is based off of one of these blender things, and I'm creating shading across the drawing. And I will typically start out big and light, giving some light shading to the whole area I'm focusing on. And as I shrink the brush, I start to zero in on parts of the drawing until we get those hard shadows that really help define the certain muscles and shapes and areas of the costume. Now finally, I decided to throw in some quick colors to give the sketch a little more life and to make sure the design flows well together. I use the mist tone again for this, but my brush pack also comes with a pencil crown brush that I'm currently still tweaking a little bit. I used an overlay layer for the colors so they fit nicely with those grayscale shades that I just laid down. And there you have it, a character sketch from start to finish. I am not a perfect artist. This is not a perfect drawing, but I really want to share my process with you guys, and we can all grow together as a community. That's really what this is about. So if you found this helpful, hit that like button and drop a comment below with any questions or what you'd like to see next. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new video. Thanks everybody. Hey, real quick before you go, if you're an artist looking to level up your drawing process, I've got something for you. I put together the Penciler Pack, a free set of custom brushes designed to make sketching and inking feel smooth, natural, and effortless. This pack drops on April 22nd, and it's completely free. Just hit the link in the description, sign up to our newsletter, and you'll get early access to the brush pack, as well as a cool little freebie that I've thrown in. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, this pack is built to help you create cleaner, more confident lines. So grab it now and start sketching.